It's 2 p.m. on Wednesday, October 15th here in Korea. Live from Seoul, I'm Laah Hyun-kyung, and these are the stories we are following at this hour. The two Koreas reportedly hold unscheduled high-level military talks behind closed doors. Seoul's unification ministry declines to confirm the report. Chinese President Xi Jinping tells South Korea's ruling party leader that Pyongyang's nuclear ambitions will never be tolerated. She says the six-party talks are still the most ideal form of dialogue. And the Bank of Korea cuts the nation's key interest rate to its lowest ever, 2%. It also revises this year's economic outlook down from 3.8% to 3.5%. Our top story this afternoon. For the first time in nearly 4 years, military officials from the two Koreas are reportedly meeting on this Wednesday. The South Korean government keeps saying it has nothing to confirm at this point, but sources say the two are discussing ways to ease cross-border tensions. Hwang Sung-hee starts us off.
The two Koreas are reportedly holding a round of military talks behind closed doors on this Wednesday. Citing senior government officials and lawmakers, local media outlets are reporting that a meeting between general-level officers is underway at the truce village of Panmunjom in an effort to ease military tensions at the border. South Korea's unification ministry declined to confirm the reports. Last week, South and North Korean patrol boats exchanged fire after a North Korean vessel crossed the de facto maritime border in the West Sea. 3 days later, the two Koreas exchanged gunfire across their shared border after the North fired at South Korean balloons carrying anti-Pyongyang leaflets. Up for discussion in today's talks are the recent clashes and ways to prevent them moving forward. A government source said the meeting was suggested by Pyongyang following last week's incident in the West Sea. The unification ministry also declined to comment on whether it had proposed a date to North Korea for their planned high-level talks. The two sides earlier agreed to hold the meeting sometime in late October or early November. In a column on Wednesday, North Korea's state-run Nodongshinmun newspaper called on South Korea to halt all military hostilities to create a mood for improving cross-border ties. The newspaper said banning anti-Pyongyang leaflets would be a first step, something the South Korean government has repeatedly said it will not do. Hwang Sang-hee, Arirang News.
South Korea's ruling party leader Kim Moo-sung sits down with Chinese President Xi Jinping in Beijing. Kim says the Chinese leader reaffirmed his stance that Pyongyang's nuclear ambitions are unacceptable. Shin Se-min has the details.
Chinese President Xi Jinping wants to revive the long-stalled six-party talks as soon as possible. In a meeting with the leader of South Korea's ruling Saenuri Party, Kim Moo-sung, in Beijing on Tuesday, President Xi said that while the talks haven't been held for 6 years, they still represent, quote, optimum process to persuade North Korea to give up its nuclear ambitions. The talks that involve the two Koreas, the U.S., China, Japan, and Russia, have been stalled since late 2008 when Pyongyang walked away from the negotiating table.
President Xi said the six-party talks could provide a sustainable, effective, and irreversible way of denuclearizing the North.
Kim told reporters that Xi reiterated the importance of dialogue and said the recent surprise visit to South Korea by a high-level North Korean delegation marked a positive step forward for relations of the two Koreas. The delegation was led by the regime's second most powerful man, Hwang Byung-seo. Ahead of his meeting with President Xi, Korea's ruling party chief met with Wang Jia-rui, the director of the International Department of the Communist Party of China's Central Committee.
South Korea has set a fine example on how to modernize. It's something we can learn from. Specifically, South Korea has a major influence in economic and cultural fields.
Wrapping up their discussions, the two pledged to widen their partnership by coordinating policies. They also agreed to hold regular talks between the ruling parties of the two countries. Shin Se-min, Arirang News.
Meanwhile, President Park Geun-hye has arrived in Italy for a biennial summit of Asian and European leaders. She will be among more than 50 leaders attending the 10th Asia-Europe meeting scheduled on Thursday and Friday in Milan. Officials say President Park will present her views on the connectivity between Asia and Europe, as well as her vision for unification of the Korean peninsula. Then she will travel to Rome for talks with her Italian counterpart Giorgio Napolitano and Prime Minister Matteo Renzi to discuss ways to strengthen bilateral economic cooperation. Before those meetings, though, President Park will meet with Pope Francis at the Vatican. Now, apart from reuniting the two Koreas, another goal of President Park is elevating Korea's reputation as a global hub that's worth investing in. And starting today, it will be easier for foreign entities to receive benefits from the Korean government when bringing their businesses into Korea. Song Ji-sun takes a look at some of these legal revisions.
Challenging Singapore, Shanghai, and other major cities in Asia for the regional headquarters of multinational companies. That's Seoul's aim and the sole purpose of a revision to Korea's Foreign Investment Promotion Act, which goes into effect on Wednesday. Seoul will now acknowledge the branch of a global mother company as a regional headquarters if it has an average revenue of $3 billion over the past 5 years, if they employ more than 10 people here, and if more than half of their investment shares come from overseas. To be recognized as a research and development center, they'll need 5 permanent researchers with $100,000 in investments to receive incentives. Creating new jobs is also an important criteria in receiving government benefits. Those that hire 200 or more employees, with total investments exceeding $2.5 million, will get a 100% reduction in rent at government-run foreign investment complexes. Before this revision, foreign manufacturers needed to invest $5 million to receive a 75% reduction. Foreign direct investment has hit a record high this year, logging $15 billion in the third quarter, up about 40% from the same period last year. The Ministry of Trade, Industry and Energy says attracting high value-added foreign investment is crucial to realizing the nation's potential economic growth. Song Ji-sun, Arirang News.
Korea's central bank lowers its key interest rate by 25 basis points to a historic low of 2%. It has also lowered the economic outlook for the year by 0.3 percentage points to 3.5%, citing slumping investments in plant and equipment and not yet bullish business sentiment. Our Hwang Ji-hye has more.
The Bank of Korea is putting all hands on deck to join a government-led campaign to spur growth in the wobbly economy. It lowered its key interest rate by 0.25 percentage point to 2% following its monthly monetary policy meeting on Wednesday. It's the second rate cut this year and marks a drop to a low not seen since the height of the global financial crisis in 2009. The central bank cut the rate in August for the first time since May last year, citing sluggish domestic demand and sagging economic sentiment. BOK Governor Lee Ju-yeol said earlier that business sentiment remains shaky, but consumer sentiment has picked up a little. The rate cut comes as the Korean government continues to try and boost growth with a set of aggressive stimulus measures unveiled in August. It also recently announced plans to expand the government's policy fund by around 5 trillion won, or roughly $4.5 billion. The central bank's decision also comes amid a prolonged period of low inflation, with the rate running in the 1% range for the 23rd straight month in September. There are concerns over massive capital outflows, however, in the face of the historically low rate and a possible monetary tightening by the U.S. Federal Reserve. Korea's central bank also faces mounting criticism over its independence, although the governor has said the BOK does not make decisions that stand opposed to its assessment of current economic conditions. Hwang Ji-hye, Arirang News.
Facebook CEO Mark Zuckerberg is in the second day of his trip to Korea. Samsung insiders say Zuckerberg and some 40 Facebook board members, including Chief Operating Officer Sheryl Sandberg, are visiting Samsung's key factory complex in the city of Suwon, south of Seoul today. Zuckerberg met with Samsung Electronics Vice Chairman Lee Jae-yong on Tuesday for 2 hours over dinner. No details have been provided officially about the meeting, but industry watchers say they may have exchanged ideas on a smartphone collaboration. The two are reportedly planning on holding another meeting today. And whether it be with Facebook or another company, tech giants like Samsung Electronics need to keep coming up with innovative gadgets to thrive. But one crucial element that needs solving is the batteries that power them. Korean manufacturers are working on new types of batteries that bend, flex, and even roll. Kim Myung-gil has this report.
Samsung SDI has developed the world's first bendable and rollable batteries that can be integrated into smart wristband watches.
We conducted thousands of bending tests, and there was no performance degradation in the charging capacity of the batteries.
Samsung SDI also unveiled pin batteries that are identical in size to a drug capsule at just 3.6 millimeters in diameter. They can be used in a variety of wearable devices that require ultra-small batteries. Not to be outdone, LG Chem introduced cable batteries, which can be used to light up OLED monitors and small display panels. They can be bent and twisted and are also waterproof.
Cable batteries are suitable for powering wearable devices such as Bluetooth earphones, headphones, and can even be applied to various clothing materials.
Both companies are also focusing on large-sized batteries, which can be used in electric vehicles. They say mass production on those will begin in the next few years. Kim Myung-gil, Arirang News.
In the year 2012 for Korea was at its record high.
All of the day's important events close to home and around the world. Join Laah Hyun-kyung live from Seoul.
Shopping market thinks the true meaning of creation shines through. The not-so-warm bilateral relations between Korea and Japan may be heading into an even frostier zone. Instead of showing remorse for its sexual enslavement of women before and during World War II, Tokyo keeps on saying it had done nothing wrong. Kim Min-ji reports.
The frosty ties between Korea and Japan are unlikely to thaw anytime soon. The Japanese government says it will actively promote that Japan has committed no sins as it pertains to the forced sexual enslavement of women during wartime. This in reaction to the Asahi Shimbun newspaper, which in early August retracted what it called erroneous articles published in the 80s and 90s about the sexual slavery issue. In a written statement, the Japanese government said it will strengthen foreign communications so that their stance in handling of affairs receives a fair assessment by the international community. That echoes what the Japanese Prime Minister has said.
Due to false reports by the Asahi Shimbun, we must work to recover Japan's honor.
Adding fuel to the fire, a top Japanese cabinet official who has spearheaded efforts to deny that Japan sexually enslaved women during World War II says she will visit a controversial war shrine that honors A-class war criminals.
When time allows, I'll visit the Yasukuni Shrine.
Japan's chief cabinet secretary Yoshida Suga said there's nothing wrong with paying respect to those who lost their lives while fighting for the country. The Japanese Foreign Ministry also recently said it will step up its false claims to Korea's easternmost Dokdo Island. And with Korea demanding that Japan acknowledge and show sincerity about its historical wrongdoings, it seems highly unlikely that summit talks will be held anytime soon with their stances on diverging paths. Kim Min-ji, Arirang News.
Doctors in Germany confirmed that a UN medical official originally from Sudan passed away Monday night despite receiving what they called intensive medical measures. The 56-year-old man had contracted Ebola while volunteering in Liberia. He was at the German clinic for 4 days and had received an experimental drug as well. The epidemic is said to be expanding geographically in Guinea, Sierra Leone, and Liberia. A WHO projection shows that there could be see between 5,000 and 10,000 new cases per week by the start of December. Assistant Director General Bruce Aylward says the group's goal is to logistically organize an Ebola response that could properly manage 70% of those cases by then. Hong Kong police have cleared out a tunnel outside the city government headquarters that had been barricaded by pro-democracy protesters the night before. The violent confrontations reignited early this morning as police arrested 45 people for illegal assembly at Lung Wo Road, an important east-west artery in Admiralty. Police have been stepping up their offenses to clear the city's roads that have been blocked for more than 2 weeks now, using pepper spray and batons to disperse the protesters. Demonstrators have been demanding full democracy for the former British colony in the 2017 chief executive elections. In other news, obesity is a serious problem throughout much of the world. That said, reports show Korea's overall obesity rate among young boys in particular is increasing at a worrying pace, now surpassing the OECD average. Our Son Jung-in has this next report.
8-year-old Sun Soo-min is heavier than most of his classmates. After a body checkup, his parents were told he has a body fat ratio twice the average for a boy his age. Like many kids in Korea, Soo-min likes to tuck into calorie and carbohydrate-rich food like white rice, red meat, and fast food, and doesn't get enough exercise.
I like snacks and drinks. I like soda like Coke.
His mother wasn't aware of the consequences and just gave him whatever he asked for.
I heard people say that fat children usually eat up being taller as adults.
The problem has worsened in recent years. In Korea, 1 in 4 boys aged 5 to 17 are obese, which is slightly higher than the OECD average. What's more concerning is that well over half of those boys remain obese into adulthood and are at higher risk of becoming morbidly obese. Obesity can lead to a host of other health issues like diabetes, high blood pressure, and it can also increase the chance of cerebrovascular disease at a young age.
Obesity is known to cause cancer, including colorectal cancer, breast cancer, as well as asthma, fatty liver, and other liver disorders.
It also incurs great social costs in terms of medical expenses and loss of production. According to recent data, the socio-economic cost stemming from child obesity in Korea amounts to $1.3 billion each year. Child and teenage obesity not only affects the individual, but their family, school, and the community as a whole. Experts advise parents to create a friendly but firm atmosphere for their children and encourage them to exercise and eat fresh fruit and vegetables to maintain a healthier lifestyle. Son Jung-in, Arirang News.
A massive rubber duck that's been popping up around the world in recent years settled down atop a well-known lake here in Seoul on Tuesday. The artist behind the so-called rubber duck project says it's intended to heal wounds. Kwon Soo-ah has our next report.
A giant yellow guest from the Netherlands has been getting a lot of attention since arriving at Seoul's Seokchon Lake from early Tuesday. This duck looks exactly like the rubber duck kids often play with in the bathtub, just a lot bigger. The purpose of the 16.5-meter tall art piece? Healing and relieving tension around the world, according to the creator of the rubber duck project, Florentine Hoffman. He has been sending the duck to waters around the world since 2007.
I saw a lot about the rubber duck project on social networking sites and was very excited when I heard it would come to Korea. Now that I'm seeing it with my own eyes, it's very cute.
But there is controversy mixed in with the cuteness. Not the short deflation period in the afternoon on the first day. But many people have wondered aloud why it is being floated in the relatively small-sized Seokchon Lake and not Seoul's famous Hangang River. Fingers have been directed at Lotte, one of the organizers of the project, which just so happens to have opened a new mega mall not too far from the lake.
There have been many cases where this project has been misused for commercial means, and that's why we discuss every detail with the artist beforehand. All the profits we make go to charity.
That is maybe why visitors did not hesitate to stand in lines to buy rubber ducks that cost around $22 US. Kwon So-ah, Arirang News.
On today's Arts and Culture, we take a look at a rare gilt bronze statue which was recently returned to Korea and is now on display for the first time. Our Im Hyun-hee joins us today for more on this exhibition. Good afternoon,
right. Good afternoon. Right. So with every treasure that's returned to Korea, of course it's special, but this one is literally one of a kind. And so it's part of a larger exhibition being held at the National Museum of Korea. So take a look.
Just this week, the National Museum of Korea unveiled a gilt bronze statue of Buddha that dates back to the late 8th or early 9th century, under the unified Silla era. And for the first time ever, this rare treasure is being put on public display. At 30 centimeters tall, the statue of Buddha resonates stylistic traits of that period, such as flat features and a big face, as well as a unique design, making this work truly one of a kind.
There are jewels embedded within the halo of the figure, making this one of only 2 in the world and possibly the only one with jewels embedded in the base as well.
Another treasure recently returned to the nation is now making its first public debut as well. The rare Goryeo Dynasty lacquered suture box is thought to be one of only 9 authentic specimens left in the world. With over 450 patterns of peonies, turtles, and other shapes, the delicate wooden box is now part of the new exhibition, showcasing a compilation of prized treasures recently returned to Korea, including an illustration of the historical Battle of Noryang, the final battle site of Korea's legendary Admiral Lee Sun-shin. Many of the items now on display were purchased by the museum or donated, but in the end, no price tag can match the historical value each one of these relics contains when it comes to Korea's history.
So the Buddha statue is obviously very rare, but what about the lacquered box? I remember that causing a stir when it first arrived.
Right. So it arrived earlier this year, but actually it's an interesting story behind that. So it's supposedly only one of 9 left in the world. And so it was actually purchased by a group called the Friends of the National Museum of Korea, and they in turn donated it to the museum. But they went in search for it because it is very special to Korea, and they actually found it in the hands of a private Japanese art collector. And the number hasn't been confirmed, but some people say that it's worth about $1.9 million US, and so quite a big trade-off. But you know, this before that Korea obtained this, they only had one other lacquered box with the inlaid mother of pearl, and so now we have 2, and so it's a very priceless, valuable treasure to have here.
Indeed. So the entire exhibition, you say, is made up of items that were returned to Korea.
Yes, exactly. And so with the Buddha statue as well, that actually was returned from the US. And so if you remember earlier this year, quite a few historical artifacts were returned to Korea. Even President of the United States brought some over himself. And that's actually because quite a few of them were taken during the Korean War as sort of souvenirs, what the soldiers thought were souvenirs at that time. But with each one that's returned, although it's regrettable that they were taken in the first place, it's very valuable for us to get all of them back.
All right. Thank you very much, Yuni, for today's report. A very meaningful and valuable story.
It's another day, a bright day for you, Seoulites. I'm Michelle Park here with the latest weather forecast. We started off with a chilly morning as usual. However, temperatures have already risen to 16 degrees in the capital and are expected to top out at around 20 degrees. And for the rest of the nation, temperatures will range between the high teens to the low 20s, depending where you are. Now, it's going to be a sunny day with a nice breeze nationwide, and as you can see, we have mostly clear skies for now, but rain is in the forecast tomorrow, starting on the west coast side, and the central region should start to see showers by early morning tomorrow. Now, and to our readings for today, Seoul will peak at 20 this afternoon. Meanwhile, the southern cities such as Gwangju and Busan will top out at 21 and 22 degrees. And moving over to other regions, Jeju Island will see up to 20, while Dokdo reaches 17, while Mount Gyeongang hits just 19 degrees. Well, that's all for now. I'm Michelle Park, and have a wonderful day.
And that brings us to the end of our newscast. Thank you for watching. We'll be back with more updates at 6 p.m. Korea time.